передает легкую музыку.
Welcome to the American Dream podcast, the show where I interview Eastern European immigrants to see their perspective of the American dream. I'm your host, Ekaterina. Privet. I'm here in the studio with comedian, actor, and writer Yakov Smirnoff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've never been to your shows before because I thought you're not actually Ukrainian and Yakov Smirnoff is just a character. After I found out that you are Ukrainian, I was mind blown. I just couldn't believe that one Ukrainian guy can take over the entertainment industry of the Ozarks. And today, I want to get to know your story and just what is it that you did that made you so famous. So let's just start from the very beginning. You were born in Odessa. Yes. How long you been living in the United States and why did you move here? And how did you end up in Missouri?
That's one question.
That's like two questions, but we'll break it down.
Okay. Well, I've been in America a long time. I came here with my parents and I did not speak English. But I was doing comedy in the Soviet Union, so I wanted to be a comedian. But I didn't speak English, so it was kind of challenging. Mm-hmm. And so what happened, I was very driven, very determined, and I decided I'm going to be a bartender.
Oh.
So I can learn English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was because in the bar, I used to work on the Russian cruise ships, and there would be a bar where I would perform, but only on the other side. So I felt that people were in the same mood when they're coming to see a show or they're going to go to the bar. And I was correct, and then little by little, my English got better. I would test jokes on those people, and if they left me tips, I knew I was funny. If they didn't, I didn't get, So that was the beginning, and then I started putting together my show, and then I got enough courage to go to Hollywood and test myself there, which I did, and I got lucky. I became kind of the lady who ran the Comedy Store, which is a big mecca of comedy still today.
Oh.
It's called the Comedy Store. It's where, it's a comedy club, but it was one of the first ones in America. And when I got there, I didn't realize how important it was. But I performed, and then I got a message that the owner liked me and thinks that I should stay in Hollywood. I lived in New York at that time, and I didn't know who she was, and so she said, "Come back tomorrow and see a regular show as opposed to like an open mic." Mm-hmm. And I came back, and the first person on stage was Robin Williams, followed by David Letterman, followed by Richard Pryor. I mean, it was just blowing my mind who I saw. So I felt like I was in the right spot, and I stayed in Hollywood. And that kind of, it took a few years, but it led me to make movies with some of those people like Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep, Jack Nicholson, Robin Williams. So all of those things happened. And I thought it was kind of normal. Mm-hmm. That, hey, you're talented and you get this kind of a break. It wasn't normal. It was just, I was just kind of a unusual. And the owner of the Comedy Store, she said, there is always place for good and different.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And that's what happened to me. And so I was riding that wave for a long time. For the 80s, I was command performances at the White House. I mean, I did a lot of things that, like White House Correspondents' Dinner. They had me as a speaker. I mean, things like that.
Wow.
That doesn't happen in one lifetime to many people. Mm-hmm. But then the Soviet Union collapsed, 1991. And David Letterman had the top 10 list of things that will now change. And I made number one on the list, Yakov Smirnoff will be out of work.
Oh.
And I thought it was kind of funny, but it wasn't funny 6 months later when none of my contracts were renewed, and I had to start looking for where can I work. And I thought, what area of the planet that they don't know that the Soviet Union collapsed? Mm-hmm. And I figured Branson, Missouri. They still don't know.
That's a perfect guess.
Yeah, they still don't know. And so that's how I ended up here. It was an emergency landing for me.
Oh.
Yeah, big time.
So did you go to college here at all?
I graduated my bachelor's degree as a teacher of art in Odessa.
Okay.
And then years later, like 2006, I graduated with my master's degree from University of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
In psychology. And then I thought I want to continue. So I got my doctorate degree 2 years ago at Pepperdine University. So I got college credits.
So how did you start your show in Branson?
Well, it was not easy because I came to town like in May or maybe April, but I rented the theater, and my first show I had 17 people in the show. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the budget because my money ran out of things that after that change of, so I was really struggling. But I had 2 little kids and a wife, and I needed to make it happen. So a lot of elbow grease, and little by little, my crowds grew. And a year later, I was already had like 400 people in the show. A year after that, 800 people in the show, and then up to thousands,
Wow. So why do you think American people love your show so much?
I think it has to do with reminding them of how great this country is as a whole. Yes, it has problems. Yes, it has challenges. But when you compare it to other systems, other ideologies in the world, it's still the best.
How many movies you've been into? Do you like acting more than live performing?
Well, I enjoy acting. It's a totally different form of entertainment because you don't get immediate feedback. You might never get a feedback from like a movie you made. Somebody will say, "Oh yeah, I saw you in the movie," but there. And with live performances, you get immediate feedback, so it's much more rewarding from a comedian standpoint.
Mm-hmm. And how many movies you been into?
I did 5.
5, wow. How do American people like theater? In Russia, every holiday involves theater. And is America different?
I don't know if Americans really connected to holidays. You mean holiday like a vacation or holiday like a Christmas?
Holiday like Christmas,
yeah, no. They might, but it's not. I don't see that being a pattern. I agree with you about the Russian pattern. But here, no. It's more like when do we have time, when do we have money, but when are we going on vacation? So if we're going to New York, we're going to see 5 Broadway shows. If we're going to Branson, we're going to see 5 shows there. If we're going to Pigeon Forge, if we're going to, normally people have time at that to go to see shows.
How many people in your cast are Russian?
Well, funny that I had a lot of dancers. I mean, now my show is just me, but I got 2 people working for me from Russia. It's interesting. They just showed up from Ukraine, both of them. Totally disconnected from one is digital marketing, one is group sales, and they're both from Ukraine. So I don't know.
So 2 people.
Yeah.
But they don't perform with you. They just like do behind the scenes things for you. Do you ever get nervous before performing? And if so, how do you control it?
I do get nervous sometimes, not when I'm in my own theater. I'm comfortable. I know what I can and cannot do. So that's pretty comfortable. However, if I'm doing something on television, if I'm doing something more like the White House or something that carries a lot more responsibility and it's something new and different, I actually am worried when I'm not nervous.
Oh.
Yeah, because nervousness makes me more aware and more
the adrenaline.
Focused. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Adrenaline helps. Have you ever been on a tour with your show in Russia or Ukraine?
I did a Showtime special in 1990, and that was called Yakov Smirnoff from Moscow, Idaho. And so I filmed half of it in Moscow and half of it it was on Showtime.
How was it?
Good. It was my first trip there. I was a little nervous. I remember, they called me, Showtime, and they said, we'd like you to go to Russia. Mm-hmm. And I said, what did I do to you? And they said, well, the Berlin Wall is down. I said, yeah, but what if they're just remodeling?
Right.
So, but I did, and I was nervous going there because I told so many jokes about the Communist Party, and and I thought they're going to be like, they'll have me on the radar. They were too busy with their own problems.
So Russian people liked your show?
It was okay. It wasn't, they liked it, but it was uncomfortable because I was in America for so long. Mm-hmm. I had to relearn the jokes and kind of, so I was more comfortable. I filmed more things in Moscow and then narrated them in Moscow, Idaho. So that was a format that worked for me better. So the humor was really for Americans, not for the Russians. So I had some very cool things that I filmed that were very funny, but they were more funny for Americans than for the Russians.
So finally, can I be a part of your crew? I can crack jokes.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
All right. Thank you, Yakov, for sharing your story with us. We are upon our break. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You're listening to the American Dream Podcast. I'm your host, Ekaterina, in the studio with Yakov Smirnoff. I want to start off by sharing an interesting quote with you from the book One Story America by Ilya Ilf and Evgeny Petrov.
Okay.
So, there is undoubtedly the right to freedom and the pursuit of happiness. But the possibility of exercising this right is extremely doubtful. This right is in the too dangerous neighborhood of Wall Street money vaults. Now, we'll be back to this quote here in a little bit, but right now, let's focus on the main topic of our podcast and discuss the topic of the American dream. So, what do you think about American dream? What is your American dream?
American dream for me was the freedoms that American Constitution offered at that time. It's changed a lot since then. I think it was religious freedom that was in existence where I was growing up in the Soviet Union. It was freedom to bear arms that was not an option. So all of the things that are in the Constitution were very appealing to me. I'll give you an example what happened where I was like an aha moment for me. I was working on a Russian cruise ship, and I went there because someone suggested if you want a vacation, they will give you a cabin, but you'll need to entertain for free. And I said, sure, fine, I'll go. So I went on that, and they liked me. And so, but I haven't seen my parents. I was touring prior to that. I haven't seen my parents in a year. And so I said to the management, I said I would be happy to go again if you let my parents have a cabin. And they literally kicked me out of the office. They said, you don't tell us what to do. We decide what we're going to do. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to go, don't go. We have people like that by the hundreds. I go, okay. So I leave. It was like in the morning when ship just came to port. And I go home and I tell my parents, I was trying to get you on board, but unfortunately it didn't work out. So, and then about 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours later, we hear the knock on the door. We had no phone. We lived in a communal apartment, so we had no phone. This messenger comes in and he hands the envelope. And in the envelope, there are 2 sets of tickets for me, for my cabin, and for my parents. And I'm blown away. And so we show up on the ship, and I became friendly with the cruise director there. And I said, can you explain what happened? Mm-hmm. Because when in the Soviet Union, when they fire you, you just banned from there. And he said, here's what happened. When the captain found out that you're not going to be on the ship anymore, he went to the office and told them that if you need to give them my cabin, give it to him. I want him on board. Mm-hmm. And I said, this is unheard of. And he said, well, the reason this has happened because our ships are being leased to a lot of foreign companies. So they go for 9 months to like Europe or America or somewhere. And the whole crew and everything changes, except the captain and a couple of top officers. Well, he said, we learned there that if you want to have a good cruise, you need to have good entertainment, good chef, good. So that's where we learned that. And I went like, wait a minute. Are you telling me that on the West, if you're more talented, you will benefit from those talents? Because in the Soviet Union, everybody was getting 120 rubles, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a plumber, it doesn't matter. That's all you get. So there was no incentive. Nobody wanted to become better or bigger. So when I heard that, I was like, oh my goodness, I can do that. I want to do that. So that changed but that's what American Dream for me was at that moment.
So when you were moving here, what were your plans?
I was hoping to do comedy, but I didn't speak English. So that was a problem. But I was determined and I kept pushing and looking for opportunities, and little by little, I got to as high as I could go. And
did your American Dream change throughout the time, or you had one specific goal?
It changed with time because I saw more opportunities. Because if you would have asked me, I remember asking one of the comedians where I was working the bar, he was performing there, and I said, how much do you guys make? And he says, well, they paid me $500 for this gig. For me, at that time, it was like, oh, my goodness. Wow, that's a lot of money at that time. Mm-hmm. But then later on, it became like that was not, so the bar kept rising and rising. And when I got agents, they became like greedy and, and all of that. So there was, but my evolution was, it's definitely a success story, no question about it.
Did you ever use an American Dream topic on your show?
Yeah, I talk about this. Actually, wanted to have a podcast. I didn't do it. That the Exploring American Dream with Dr. Yakov Smirnoff. Oh. I recorded a couple of those segments, but I didn't. What pulled me away from all of that was my passion about relationships. Mm-hmm. I really believe that I can make a big difference. So that's my new American dream, is to be able to reach as many people as I can and open their eyes, especially young people like yourself who are in that situation where they're not sure why it's not working. And I spent 20 years figuring this out.
Wow. So do you think you reached your American dream? Is there a limit?
I think there's a lot more there. I don't know. I kind of see it as a moving, something that I don't want to really achieve. I see it as a horizon that I can see something else on it and then something else on it. I think that's worries me, that American people, with all this intervention that the government is doing right now, will stop dreaming, because they'll be given what they need to live on, and they don't have to, which is where I grew up. I grew up with them saying, you're going to get 120 rubles no matter what you do. Well, why would I want to dream something big?
So do you think you reached your American dream when it comes to your career?
Oh, no.
No?
No. No. I mean, career, it all depends how you weigh this. If you see yourself as done, then you're done. In my case, I'm not done. I really, I was watching a friend of mine who is a pastor in the church in Branson, and he's very funny, and he talks about relationship, and he performed, there's a video of Ted Cunningham at Liberty University in Virginia. It's a Christian university, and there's 20,000 people in the audience, and he's killing it. I mean, he is funny, and they're eating out of it, and I go, that's my next dream.
Wow. Ambitious.
Why not?
Have you ever thought about giving up on your American dream and moving back?
No, never. No, I'm worried about America itself, but not going back. No. My wife is from Ukraine, so we go there to visit her parents, and I'm comfortable being there, but not to live there. No.
So finally, what do you think about the quote that I shared with you earlier from the book One Story America by Ilya Ilf and Evgeny Petrov? I'm gonna read it again.
Yeah.
So there is undoubtedly the right to freedom and the pursuit of happiness, but the possibility of exercising this right is extremely doubtful. This right is in too dangerous neighborhood of Wall Street money vaults.
I can understand their observation at those days. I was a rebel. I didn't go to the way that other Russian people who immigrated. I went and said, I'm going to be an American. I'm not going to be a Russian immigrant. And I dove in head first, learning English, had a girlfriend, American girlfriend very soon. I was determined to be an American. I think when I do know my cousin came, for example, and he was looking at that through that lens of that quote. He was looking, it's like, it's too hard. It's too hard because you really need to be on the ball. And he was like going, you know what? I'm going to get my pension. I'm not going to do that. I'm not taking a chance. And I think a lot of people thought that way, but I didn't listen to that. I heard my own message from God to say, go there, you'll be fine.
Well, it was a pleasure of having you today with me on this podcast. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook at Podcast TID.